Hi everyone, this is Nitin Choda and I spent several hours going through the $2 trillion coronavirus relief bill that was drafted by the Senate, passed by the House and signed into law by the President. Now this new bill has major implications for all of us. Now I'm specifically going to give you the implications and help you understand the implications for you if you're a homeowner, and if you have a mortgage, a federally backed mortgage, which by the way is going to be probably 99% of us watching this training video. And then I'm going to give you the significance and the implications if you're a renter. So let's start with the homeowner bit. Now, if you have a federally backed mortgage, let's say you did a conventional loan, doesn't matter whether it's a 15-year or a 30-year loan, if it's a Freddie, Fannie, if it's a Ginnie Mae, FHA, USDA, VA loan, doesn't really matter. If it's a federally backed loan, if it's backed by the federal government, as you can see here on the screen here. By the way, this is the 880-page bill. This is a document that you can download. And what the bill says is that if you have a federally backed loan, you can qualify for forbearance. Now get this, if you have either indirect or direct hardship as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. Now this is where it gets really interesting. If you have a single family home which is 1 to 4 units and you have direct or indirect hardship from the COVID-19 crisis, all you have to do is to affirm the hardship. Now what does that mean? It means you just have to tell them you have hardship. Now when I say them, I mean your borrower. There is no additional documentation needed. In fact, I'll search for the words no additional documentation. You can see that it's in the bill. So again, if you have a federally backed mortgage for your residential federally backed loan, you're a homeowner, you're living in your home, you have a mortgage and it's federally backed, you can qualify for forbearance. Now you have to apply for forbearance during the covered period. I believe it's from the middle of March to the middle of July. You can look that up. You have to apply for forbearance and I'll walk you through the steps of applying and I'll tell you what you need to do in order to be able to get forbearance. But the most important thing is, again, if you're living in a single family home and you're a homeowner and you have a federally backed residential mortgage with 1 to 4 units, all you have to do is to affirm that you have either direct or indirect hardship as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. In other words, all you have to do is to tell them, and there is no additional documentation required. I'm going to repeat this, no additional documentation. If you have a multifamily home or an apartment building where you have 5 or more units, then you need documentation. But we're not going to get into that. I'm going to focus on the single family aspect of it. Now, during the covered period, which is from the middle of March to the middle of July, what you have to do is to get in touch with your loan officer or with the company that you have the loan with. And then what you have to do with your lender, and what you have to do is simply tell the lender that you want to apply for forbearance. Now, what's happening these days, because everything is so simple, so straightforward, a lot of lenders are making this entire process online. They're making it extremely simple to do this whole thing online. And all you have to do is just go online and apply for forbearance and fill out a form. It's really that simple. Now, what gets even more interesting is if you apply for forbearance during the covered period, you need to wait until you hear back from the lender and you have something in writing from the lender or your loan officer, whether it's an email, a fax, a letter with a signature on it. And then as long as the lender says, okay, you have been granted forbearance, then at that point you can stop making your payments for however long the period is. Now, the thing in the bill is that you can get up to 120 days. There's some instances of 180 days, but you can get up to 120 days of forbearance. And then at the end of 120 days, you can actually apply for an extension with the lender. So now think about it. Let me be clear. Forbearance doesn't mean that you stop paying your mortgage and the bill's gone. It means you're pushing the payment down the road. You need to catch up with those payments at some point. Your lender is going to expect you to make up for it. Ideally, if you can negotiate with the lender and say, look, at the end of 4 months, instead of me paying the whole lump sum at one time, because that's going to be a lot of money, I'm going to start making payments in installments. Or if you can convince the lender to just take those 4 months of payments and then just sort of apply them towards the end of the loan, 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road, that would be phenomenal. It's going to be hard to get the lenders to agree to that, but it's worth talking to someone and seeing if you can negotiate that. Because in these times, what you negotiate for is what you get. I'm going to repeat this, is very important. In these times, what you negotiate for is what you get. So don't be afraid. Remember, you're the borrower. The lender is actually depending on you to make those payments. And in these unusual times, especially when the federal government has passed a $2 trillion relief bill, the lender is going to work with you. If you can get clear written documentation that the lender is going to allow forbearance, it's not going to affect your credit. There are going to be no late fees, no finance charges, nothing of that sort, because that's what the law is intended to do. Now, you can't just say, okay, forbearance is an option, I'm going to stop making my payments. That's not how it works. If you do that, then it could negatively impact your credit. There could be late fees, finance fees. You need to plan a couple of steps ahead and apply to the lender and say, look, during this, I need forbearance for up to 120 days. I am attesting. Now that's the documentation here, as you can see on this is from the bill, and I'll actually read out. Upon receiving a request for forbearance from a borrower, the servicer in this case, which is the lender, and it could be, your lender is going to be a federally backed lender, because most loans, conventional loans, are federally backed, unless of course you took a hard money loan or a private loan, which isn't backed by the federal government. The servicer shall, with no additional documentation, I'm actually going to highlight this here, with no additional documentation required other than the borrower's attestation to a financial hardship caused by COVID-19 emergencies, and with no fees, penalties, or interest, be able to just make the payments down the road. So step one, talk to your lender and ask for forbearance if you anticipate having a hard time with your payments in the future. Plan ahead, plan now, and apply now, because the lines for forbearance are getting longer and longer and longer. Just go ahead and do it now, so that you can plan to skip your payments a month, 2 months, 3 months down the road if you need to. Don't expect it to happen for the payment that's coming up in a week or two. That's not how forbearance works. You have to give them time to process everything and get back to you. Try and negotiate with the lender so that you can pay them back, preferably at the end of the mortgage. That would be phenomenal. Or if you can maybe pay them off in installments. This way you're essentially borrowing from the lender at 0% for a few months and then paying it back gradually. Try to avoid a situation where 3-4 months down the road you have a big lump sum payment due to the lender. Get written documentation, written confirmation from the lender, whether it's an email, a fax, and a written letter, and then you can stop making the payments. So make sure you apply for forbearance. Again, if you have a federally backed loan for a single family residence, everything I've mentioned in this video is going to be helpful for you. I would also encourage you to pick up the phone, call your loan officer, and if you're not sure whether your loan is federally backed, which I'm sure it is most likely, just call your loan officer, or reach out to them by email and say, hey, is my loan federally backed? And they'll say yes. And then at that point you talk to the lender, and the lender will be able to support you. So important to be able to do something like this during these unusual times, so that you can manage your finances, you can manage your cash flow. Now, if you are a renter, in other words, you're not a homeowner, you're renting from someone else, you can talk to your landlord and ask for a forbearance or ask for a deferment of your rent. In other words, you say, look, I'm going to be late in my rent. I need you to let me pay my rent 60 days down the road or 90 days down the road, and work with your lender. So that work with your landlord, so your landlord can defer your payments and work with you. It's sort of a form of forbearance, but it's not federally backed. It has nothing to do with the federal government. And your landlord, now if your landlord, if they have a federally backed loan for a residential property, they may be able to apply for forbearance themselves from their lender. So think about it this way: if you're a renter, you're here. You have obviously the landlord, and then the landlord has a lender, because you as a renter, you make your payments to the landlord, and then the landlord in turn, assuming they have a mortgage, which could be a federally backed mortgage, they could be making the payments to their lender. So keep these things in mind. I hope this was helpful. If you qualify for forbearance as a homeowner, in a residence, somebody has to be living there. You can't just have a piece of land that qualifies for forbearance. Commercial property, within the context of this discussion, does not qualify for forbearance. But if you have a home and you're a homeowner living in a single family home that's 1 to 4 units, then you qualify for forbearance from your lender if you have a federally backed mortgage. This is the law now. These are your rights. Go ahead and reach out to your lender. It could be your bank. You could go on a bank and do live chat with them. Good luck getting in touch with them over the phone. That's going to be a while. A lot of lenders now have these online forms where you can just apply for forbearance online and wait to hear back from them, and they will work with you. So keep this in mind and apply for forbearance so that you can make the most of this $2 trillion bill that has been passed up in Washington, D.C. So just to show you how straightforward this is, I own multiple rental properties, and I actually logged into my borrower's website where I have federally backed loans for my rental properties, and I was able to click on this link here that says important coronavirus updates. And this is so important. Now this says, if you have been impacted financially by the coronavirus, you may qualify for monthly mortgage payment assistance options known as forbearance. During this exceptionally challenging time, we are here to help you navigate the various mortgage assistance programs that may be available to you. And our team is diligently monitoring the situation, so on and so forth. Now, this coronavirus stimulus bill is called the CARES Act. This was signed into law recently by the president. And a forbearance, and here's the definition of the word forbearance, is a temporary suspension of your monthly mortgage payment. Think of it as a mortgage freeze. You're not doing away with your mortgage payments. It's not like, they waive it or anything, but it's a temporary suspension, a mortgage freeze, if you will. They're deferring the payment. During the forbearance period, your payments are suspended for a set period of time. However, if you're able to make, of course, they want you to make partial payments, but if you can have a complete freeze of your payments, that would be even better. So, and then what they have here is they have repayment plans, loan modification, so on and so forth. Now, they've given us some examples here. John's monthly mortgage is $1,000 and due on a certain date. He chooses a forbearance in March. As a result, the forbearance period, now this is once the lender approves you for the forbearance, will run for a few months. During this time, your mortgage payments are suspended. At the end of that period, now, by the way, this is what the lender ideally wants. At the end of the forbearance period, they want you to pay the whole thing at one time. But you should negotiate with the lender to let you pay off the money gradually. So you don't have to pay off all the money at one time. So keep that in mind. And that's it. Now, if I need to apply for forbearance, all I need to do in this case is I need to put in my first name, my last name, my loan number, the last four of my social. Am I able to continue making payments? Let's just say I say no. And for the sake of this video, I'm actually going to go to the next page and show you what the next page is, so you see, at least for my lender, how straightforward it is. Now, keep in mind, it might be a little different for your lender because every lender processes this a little differently, but it's going to be fairly straightforward. It's going to be online. So here's the option. I put in my first name, I put in my last name, I put in the loan number, the last 4 digits of the SSN, and are you able to continue making payments and pay the balance at this time? I'm actually going to say no, and then we come to the next page and it says, have you been affected by the pandemic? This is where you say yes. This, by the way, is the affirmation that I was talking to you about. How have you been impacted? Let's just check loss of income. Do you foresee hardship? Let's just say long term. Is the property in my case, it's an investment property. What are your intentions? I'm going to keep it, and you need to put your signature and hit submit. That's how straightforward it is for this particular lender to be able to apply for forbearance. So I hope this was helpful. And if you qualify for forbearance, if you need forbearance, you have the option to apply for it, and you should apply for it if you have a federally backed residential loan sooner rather than later. I hope this was helpful. Good luck, everyone. And if you're watching, good luck, everyone. Thank you so much. If you're watching this video on YouTube, because it'll be on our YouTube channel as well, definitely click subscribe, because we'll be launching more videos that are going to be helpful for you going forward to get you through this crisis. So again, click subscribe and you'll get notified about future videos. Thank you.